Welcome to Get Organized at Work. I'm your host, Kayla Fahey-Ahrndt, healthcare leader, mom of three, and your go-to guide for ditching the chaos and taking control of your workday. This is the show where we turn overwhelming to-do lists into clear, actionable plans so you can crush your goals and show up as your best self at work and in your life. Whether you're here for strategies to stay ahead or systems to simplify your workday, you're in the right place. Let's get organized, have some fun, and make this year your best year in your career yet. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to Get Organized at Work podcast. My name's Kayla. I'm your host. Today we're going to be talking about how to get piles off your desk and organizing your paperwork in digital files. I am super passionate about this. If you have ever seen a live stream of mine or maybe listen to a podcast episode, you've probably heard me mention it. I used to have piles upon piles on my desk. And this was at a time when actual paperwork was way more common. I'm talking at least 10-ish years ago or a little bit less, about 10 years probably though. But at the same time, I could have had better systems to have less paper piles everywhere. And I've seen so many people who just really struggle with papers, even in this day. So I thought this would be a perfect episode to help you out and just give you the little nudge it takes to go paperless and to digitize your files or just have better systems for keeping that paper moving and gone. Before we dive into this episode, I do want to remind you that we have a podcast community. It's free. And it is a place for professionals to network, get to know each other, and also get to know me a little bit better, continue the conversation beyond the podcast where I'm just talking at you. You can talk to me. And I have free downloads in there, leader standard work templates. I've linked videos. Everything's really organized in there, so you don't have to search through all my content. I have several years of videos and podcast episodes and tutorials and downloads, and sometimes it's just hard to comb through it all. So I've organized it in there and I'm uploading new templates all the time. So leader standard work stuff, project management, active project list templates in there. So go check it out. Again, it's free. I just started really talking about it last month, and there's a ton of people in there already have joined, and we had our first free webinar last month all about project management. And so like I said, there's templates and downloads in there, but also the webinar is free and it's in there for the community. So you can watch the replay if you missed it, or if you just joined and you're brand new and you want to meet me virtually and see what this is all about. So I'd encourage you to join. The link is in the description below or in the show notes. Also, right before I get started, you could probably hear it in my voice. I am just getting over influenza. I did get tested. I had influenza A, the H1N1 strain, and man, that thing just kicks your booty. So many people are sick with that. And it's just taking more than a week to get better. I'm at a week and a half now since I first had symptoms. So if you get sick or if you've had this, I do not recommend it. I do not wish it upon you. I'm thinking about you and hoping that you recover quickly. Take care of yourselves. Hydrate, and get the rest you need. All right. With that, let's get started into the episode about how to get piles off your desk, how to organize your paperwork in your digital files. So the goal of this episode is to have you take some actionable steps to clear your desk, organize your files, and create a system that works. So like I said, I used to have piles on piles because at the time I was a technical specialist / supervisor. So there were a lot of documents to just always review. People would document quality control and preventative maintenance and things like that on paper. And then I'd have to review that stuff and sign it off, physically sign. And this feels like maybe something of the past, but I know there's people out there who are in healthcare or other fields related that do similar things like that. Or maybe you're a teacher and you have paperwork to grade. And so there's always just paper everywhere. And so I always tell the story about there's a picture of me out there where I'm barefoot sitting with my feet up on a chair in the office. I'm wearing my professional clothes, but I'm the only one in the office. So I'm kind of feeling a little bit casual. And one of my colleagues walked by the door and he goes, "Kayla, what are you doing here? It's Friday. Nobody's working today." And I was like, "Oh, I'm just catching up." And I would have to have these times where I was just
catching up randomly, like every month, where I'd get behind and then I'd be looking at my piles of papers and be like, okay, well, I just got to get caught up. And as soon as I get caught up, then I'll be able to, feel better about my life. So I, what I want for you is to not really ever have to have like this massive deep clean of your desk where you're like, oh my gosh, I have to get caught up. You have a system that helps you maintain and that you can do clean sweeps every once in a while, but you don't need to like overhaul your life. It's kind of like when you lose control of your house and all of a sudden it's super messy and you have to spend like the weekend deep cleaning it. Like I don't want that for you. I don't want you to get into that hole. So that's why I want to help you today. So part one of our episode is why does clutter happen and how does it affect our productivity? And so I mean, we know why do we accumulate piles of paper and even digital clutter? I mean, honestly, I feel like one of the things is it's our mindset of I'll just get to it later, right? It's just easier to quickly save something, not really think about it and be like, oh, yeah, like we'll get to that later. Like, oh, it's harmless. It can stay there. Or I don't know, kind of defer decisions till later. The second reason I think is there's no clear system for processing paperwork or even like emails, things coming into your inbox where there's no system. It's just sort of like all coming at us at once. We don't have a way to work through it. It's just there. And the third thing is, honestly, for me too, it was like the fear of tossing something that was important, especially in a role where documentation and regulatory compliance is really important. Like, what if I need that thing later? But half the time it was stuff that I created or that had a second version online or wasn't really something that I needed to hang on to. I was sure based on regulatory or whatever that I didn't need to keep it, but I still had a fear of tossing it. But there is a hidden cost of all this clutter. Number one, you can have wasted time searching for documents. Number two, mental overwhelm and decision fatigue, right? And then number three is reduced efficiency in work and life. Like none of us want to be combing through all of this waste and paper all the time. We want to just get our work done and get out. And so let's dive into the decluttering and the organizing the paperwork part of this episode, part two. So the first step really is to sort and eliminate. And people talk about the three pile method, which is number one pile would be your trash or shred, documents you no longer need. Number two is the file. You want to file important records slash categorize them properly. And then number three, take action on things, items that need follow up, forms to sign. Maybe it's a bill, maybe it's a membership, maybe it's a thing you need to follow up with someone on. Those are the three sort of categories and piles. And the way you can go through this is to ask yourself two questions. Number one is, do I actually need this? And am I keeping it just in case? And then number two is, can I digitize this instead of keeping a paper copy? Now, for me, I think this is a helpful, the three pile method when you're first doing like a large overhaul. Like if you are starting with lots of piles and lots of paperwork, either in drawers or cabinets or whatever, this is great. Like look through stuff. Can I just toss or shred? Is that an easy thing? Okay, get rid of those things. File, categorize things properly and then follow up on things, your action items. But just as a day-to-day method, like how do we actually kind of make this a system? And I think just making a home for everything is the best thing you can do. And I will also say, and we'll go into more of the systems in a second here, but I'll also say is that I'll do a end of the day sweep. When I used to have a physical office, when I actually had an office, I would do a physical sweep so that I would try to make my desktop clean at the end of the day. So what I would do is look at any papers that I had written on and say, do I need this for tomorrow? Do I need this for the future? Did I use this paper the way that I needed to use it today? Great, I did. Oh, scratch paper. Okay, great. I'm going to toss slash shred, recycle it. Like taking action, a little bit of action every day to maintain the cleanliness of your space is so helpful. The other thing with filing important things and categorizing them properly, it really is important to create a simple filing system. We're going to talk about that. But using the filing system. So something that I would do was once I had my folders made of in my filing cabinet of stuff I actually wanted to keep, I would just like leave the drawer a little bit ajar every day as a reminder, like, okay, once you are done with those papers, put them back. And a lot of times when I first went all digital, or tried to go as much digital as possible, is that I would just keep a hanging file of working documents of the current projects I was working on. And then after those projects were done, I'd either digitize if I felt like I had to save it, which almost never did, because honestly, the thought of scanning everything in, I was like, not worth it. Shred, right? That can be kind of the way that you decide. But I'd either decide to digitize or then I'd get rid of it. So only having working files. For you, maybe you have stuff you do need to keep for a certain amount of time. The best advice I can give you is after you're categorizing, like, okay, all of these forms are the same type of form, put actual dates of when you can shred or get rid of or what the time period is on there. So I might say, okay, I need to keep these personnel records for 5 years. So I'd say, like, these are all records from this date to this date, shred on this date. So then you don't have to think every time you go to look at that file, you've already decided, okay, this is how I'm going to manage it. And then action items that need follow up. I like to leave those out on the desk because those are visual, but I also like to think of it like this. If I leave these out and don't take action, I'm creating more visual clutter. So let's just take the 5 minutes and take care of these items that need follow up. And it's going to take you kind of time to become in the habit of sorting through those things and taking action immediately and not being okay with them just becoming wallpaper. Never let your piles get a certain height. Like, okay, I only want one or two pieces of paper here. I don't want an inch of paper to go through. All right, so step two, after we've, sorted and eliminated, second thing you want to do is digitize important papers. I wanted to share, like I said before, the step two scan can be a big daunting one. And so that might be actually a really good way to gatekeep and say, like, if this isn't worth it to scan it to me, then it's not worth it to save. So then it's a shred, right? But then, like I said, you might have regulatory things or things that you feel like the next person in that role might need, and you might want to scan. So if you're working remote and you don't have easy access to a scanner and you don't want to just take a picture of it with your phone, my favorite free app to use is called Genius Scan, like Baby Genius. So download Genius Scan. It's not sponsored, but I learned about it when I was in master's school because I would have to upload documents in PDF form all of the time. And sometimes they were just like printed notes. And so you literally just take a picture of the document with your phone and it like flattens the document. So even if like the corners are all janky or the paper's discolored or whatever, it can take the picture in black and white or in color for you. It makes it look like a flat piece of paper and it like makes it adjusted so it's not crooked or anything and it turns it into a PDF. It's so beautiful. And then you can literally just email it to yourself. And that's such a great, easy way to scan documents. It's so fast. Anytime I have to do taxes or bills or anything for my work, I always use Genius Scan. And I tell my husband too, I'm like, dude, like this is the best app ever. Obviously, if you're working in healthcare and stuff like that, be careful of like PHI and everything. But Genius Scan is an awesome free app. I would also store files in a centralized digital folder. You can use Google Drive, Dropbox, or maybe just your computer has, or your office uses Microsoft 360, so they use OneDrive. It's a great place to save things. And what I will say is that I know there's people out there that love having like the perfect folders for everything in their digital files. I always start out with the best of intentions, and then when I go to save as, I never put things in the right folder when it's like my personal OneDrive. So what I do is I just make sure that my naming consistency is clear so that when I go to search for files later, it's obvious what it is. So let's say it's 2024 tax docs, tax documents. That's what I would call it. I wouldn't call it scan 1, 2, 3, 4. You really need to make sure the naming is consistent and clear. So as long as you're comfortable searching, just naming the files in a proper way or a consistent way is the best. Although if you do like folders, by all means, like make all the beautiful folders. Just remember that how you use each one. This also becomes really important when you're saving things for other people. When I'm saving things for other people at my work, I'll save them in a location everyone has access to or the right people have access to, right? So, like a specific Teams channel or a SharePoint page that only certain people have access to. Obviously, I'll create folders so that my successor has a folder for each of my laboratories that I manage in each of the areas, right? But in my own personal OneDrive, I just like to name my files consistently and I just don't worry about folders. I just make sure the naming convention is there. Step 3 is to create simple filing systems with categories that make sense for you. I already kind of just hit on this, but like easy words like financial, work projects, personal. Use labeled folders or an accordion file for easy access for things that are not digital. And again, just like keep it simple. Definitely put the retention time on there if you can, and actually use them properly the way that you intend. If you don't actually use them properly, then what's the point? That stuff should be shredded and recycled. Step 4, set up a central inbox for incoming paper. So I would designate one spot for incoming papers so that there's no more random piles. And you want to schedule time to access those papers so they don't stack up. So if you're someone like me, where in the past I would get all these documents to review, I'd get just random papers. I just have it all in one stack in my mailbox, and then weekly I would go through that and obviously I think in the day when I would get the papers, I'd comb through stuff, make sure there was nothing urgent, and then I would schedule time on my calendar, time block, to go through and batch work on all of those pieces of papers that came in. Remember, as a leader, as a professional, you're getting so much information and stimulus and requests from different places. Inbox, your email, papers, people talking to you, meetings and things like that. This is just another place where information flows to you, where you get requests and action items. You need to schedule time for it. If I could go back and do things differently now, I think I would do a little bit every day on those papers, as I've seen the people that are working for me now do. They're like every day they get something in their inbox and they're like, spend the morning just taking care of those papers, like sort of the task things. And they spend the afternoons more on their projects. My brain doesn't work like that. I like to deep dive into projects first in the morning because that's when I'm most like awake. And then in the afternoon, do some like mindless tasks and things like that, which it would be more of like the paperwork that would come into my inbox. But it's all about how you work, right? So if I could go back, I would try to spend a little time every day so that that pile didn't get too large. I never figured out quite how to manage it until I became a manager and I just became like totally paperless. But now if I could go back, I think that's the smarter way instead of batching weekly. But hey, it's up to you. It's whatever works for your workflow. All right, part 3 of this episode is on organizing your digital files and your emails. So now that we've, saved things in your files and named them and all that, I want to talk about just like decluttering your digital files in general. So one place you could start is with your desktop and your download folders. You can delete or move anything that you need to its proper place. But also, I search my downloads all the time. So if it's not too full and it doesn't bother you and you can search in it, then great. Use your computer or email as a searchable catalog. Like I said, just be sure the file names are consistent so you can find them later, and create a clear folder structure, work, personal projects, etc. So we already kind of went through the decluttering. Let's go to step 2 and talk about using checklists and project management tools to stay organized. So instead of keeping like a paper to-do list, I love using the apps Asana, OneNote, or Microsoft Teams for tracking tasks. Now, I will say a lot of times my brain just works better. I process better when I use a notebook or post it and I'm like physically handwriting something down, even if I'm using my iPad with my Apple Pencil or something like that. And so, but the thing is, you will lose track of all those pieces of paper and notes in a notebook. You'll never go back to them unless you're very intentional about putting them in all in one spot. So what I would do is at the end of the day, go to my central location in Asana or my central location in OneNote or Microsoft Teams And I would add all the action items and to-dos and things I don't want to forget into that system. Because you've written them down with your hand, you won't forget, right? Like those things are going to be processed much better, but you want to pull them out into a central place so you can just remember them and use it as an active like to-do list rather than like, oh, I know I wrote that down somewhere. I can't remember. At least that's what works for me to digitize. And then you can shred those post-its. You can keep that notebook later on once it's full, but you can tuck it away somewhere or shred it if it's not important to you. So I think that's the best solution. I used to have post-its everywhere and use them as like my actual to-dos, or took post-its and wrote it down like an actual physical to-do list in a notebook. And that just was like too much work to maintain it. It got messy, it was crazy. So just taking everything from the notebook and the post-its and put them into a digital place, especially like OneNote or Asana or Teams, is perfect. The other really cool thing is that Microsoft Teams allows you to create project Kanban boards. And so if you have a project, it can have its own little like idea Kanban card, and you can actually link files or attach files directly into that project. And so that's great. If you have like a piece of paper that you saved or a screenshot from a meeting or something, you can actually upload it into be organized right there for that file. So there's no need for you to keep a piece of paper of a layout or something someone handed you in a meeting. Just open Genius Scan, scan it in, save it to your OneDrive or wherever, and then upload and attach it to the project and then delete it. It's going to be in your OneDrive. It's also going to be in wherever you saved it. So you do not, and then shred it. My apologies. Just get rid of that paper. So linking everything in Teams or in Asana or OneNote or Teams allows you to see all tasks and documents in one place rather than digging through folders, which you're going to love. Step 3 of this part is taming your email inbox. So I've actually done, and I think it was called Inbox Bliss or something that like that, or Email Bliss. I will link to that video. I'm not sure if I put it as a podcast episode, but I will link it to it. And I talked about the 5-minute rule. Basically, if you get something in your inbox, if it takes you 5 minutes to do it right now or schedule time to do it. It's quick and easy. If it's going to take you longer than that, maybe you need to read, plan, whatever, you can always reply to that email and say, confirm that I received it. And then I will prioritize it for XYZ time and I'll get back to you. And then schedule time on your calendar to work through it. If you don't know how long it's going to take you, clarify with the sender and say, like, what's the timeline on this? How much time? Or, hey, I've got other work prioritized for this week. Is this urgent? All of that. You want to sort of comb through it and determine urgency. And if it takes only a few minutes, get it done. If it takes longer, then schedule time to do it. The other thing that I am so guilty of is like, I love subscribing to different like newsletters, and companies somehow get me on their email list for cool new things. Oh my gosh. Just unsubscribe ruthlessly from emails that you do not need. Just do yourself a favor. Anytime you get one of those emails, unsubscribe. The other thing you can do, if it's just too overwhelming to unsubscribe or whatever, is create a rule in your inbox that sends all of those subscription emails to a folder that's not in your main inbox. So, for example, I'm subscribed to AABB, and it's just a newsletter that is very transfusion and industry specific to my job. I like to get it, but I'm not always able to read it right in real time. And I like to like go back and search for cool articles. So I have a rule that newsletter just goes to a folder called AABB. And then I know that the emails are there when I want to go look at them. I go look at them. If I don't, they're not cluttering my inbox. You can do this for almost any type of email, creating folders and filters to automatically sort through incoming emails. You can make emails from certain people bold in your inbox. At one point, I made all of my boss's emails blue. So the text turned blue. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, those are the ones I need to answer first, right? There's so many cool creative things you can do in your inbox to filter. But I would say the biggest thing is unsubscribe, the 5-minute rule, and create proper folders and filters for things. And then set aside time to clear your inbox. I think this is one of the most challenging things we can do because it just feels like another place to keep clean and manage. And it's less about, it's not a very efficient way of communication. At least I do not think so. I like to just like pick up the phone sometimes and just reply to somebody or Teams chat them and avoid an email, but it's still something we have to manage. So, what I like to do is sort of like every day go through and look at the emails I got today. And if I see anything that's like scammy or just something that for my awareness or whatever, I delete or archive it. And at least that keeps everything in my inbox something that was intended specifically for me. All right, the last part is part 4, maintaining a clutter-free desk and digital space. So you can adopt something called the one-touch rule. This means handling documents once instead of letting them pile up. So maybe you're scheduling your weekly reset or your time every day to go through your papers. You can spend the 15 minutes each week or day clearing your workspace, going through, asking yourself those questions again. Do I need to keep this? Is it something I'm actually going to need, or am I holding on to it just in case? Can this be scanned? Use automation and digital tools like Genius Scan, Google Drive, OneNote to scan and store documents, and use Asana or Teams or Microsoft OneNote to track action items instead of sticky notes everywhere. So we kind of already touched on all these things. So, but once you create systems for like, where are you going to store stuff? How are you going to put things that just come to you and are on a post-it inside one place? As soon as you decide those locations and start using those systems, oh my gosh, you will notice a huge change. And one thing I want to add to this is create a standard work, which is essentially a daily habit or a weekly habit where you actually track if you're doing this. So set up your systems where you're going to file all of the things you're going to do to keep clutter free. And then maybe somewhere digitally, or maybe in front of you on a post-it, whatever it is like a checkbox for the day. And you just write down, whatever you want to call it, like clutter-free practice or let's go digital. Like make it exciting and make a box for yourself. And if you did it at the end of the day, check the box and give yourself a reward. If you didn't, why? Maybe you didn't create space for it, it was too busy, whatever. And notice how you feel if you didn't do it, because the next morning, that stuff's going to be waiting for you. And notice what it feels like when you come in to start the day when it's a lot less cluttered. You're like, wow, I can think. I have actual space to think. And that's going to help you maintain the new systems. So, final takeaways and the call to action for you all is to sort, file, digitize, and maintain. You got to set up simple systems to prevent overwhelming clutter. And I want to challenge you to spend 15 minutes today just decluttering one area of your desk or office, because it's just going to make you feel lighter, brighter, and more capable. It's going to feel like you have more space for thinking, which is crazy because you have the same amount of space for thinking the way you are right now. You just might be blocked because of all this stuff. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to join the Get Organized at Work community. It's the free podcast community for more productivity tips and to network and meet other professionals who are working hard to be more organized, proactive, and grow in their careers this year. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye.